Hello. Hi, everyone. We're getting to start our in a few minutes to figure it out. Hey, here we go.
Hi, Nikki.
Mr. Patrick Mignon, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. And I hope everyone else can hear us okay. I can't hear you, Pat. Let me see if Pat, can you talk?
Hey.
I'm not hearing you. Let me try this again. Okay. Pat? That
Better?
I can hear now. Awesome. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Nikki Rietti, and I am a residential realtor with the Rietti Group of Douglas Elliman Real Estate. And this is my weekly Facebook Live show, called At Home with Nikki, where I typically come on and share some tips and tricks of the trade that I've learned in over 20 years of being a residential realtor in sunny Southeast Florida. So today I'm super excited because we have something really special planned for you. Normally I would come on and have a different topic, that would share, something relevant about getting your home sold or looking for a home, things like that. But today I decided to invite someone who I think the world of to come and share with us on a really important topic, and that is insurance coverage. And specifically, we're going to be looking at your insurance coverage as it relates to the hurricane season. We enter the hurricane season on June 1st, and it runs through until November 30th. And I think that as we prepare for that season, I haven't really heard the latest update about how active a season they're expecting or not. But as we prepare for that season, there's been so many things that have changed with the insurance industry that I thought it would be really powerful for you guys to understand the insurance industry and your homeowner's insurance policy as it relates specifically to the hurricanes that we get hit with in sunny Southeast Florida, where it is not always sunny every single day. Today, however, it's a winter. You should be here. Anyway, so I'm excited to introduce Patrick Mignon. He is an insurance agent that I've been working with for several years. He is a personal friend as well as an insurance agent. He does my own home insurance. He's amazing, the best. And I'm excited to have him join us today. So Patrick, welcome.
Hi, Nikki.
Hi, how are you? We have feedback again, don't we? Do you have it?
Okay. Hi, folks. How are you today? Nikki, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today to go over, the insurance and the hurricane, things that people worry about all the time. So thank you again for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us because, your expertise and your knowledge is going to really help a lot of our people learn what they need to learn, what they need to know as we go into the hurricane season. We both have a mutual friend who says, you don't know what you don't know. And it's what you don't know that will hurt you, especially as it relates to hurricanes. So,
Correct.
Pat, just to give a little bit of an explanation for people who don't live in South Florida, Florida law requires that you have property insurance. Most lenders will require that you have property insurance, but we're also required to have insurance coverage for hurricanes because that is something that affects our area. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this subject, and as we dive into it, I thought, why don't we start with your telling us what is hurricane insurance and what is the difference between hurricane insurance and homeowners insurance? Is there a difference? Are they the same thing?
That's a great question, Nikki. Hurricane insurance and homeowners insurance is actually kind of the same thing. The hurricane insurance is part of your homeowners insurance. Your homeowners insurance has two different parts. There's a section that will deal with specifically hurricane coverage, and then specifically with all other perils such as fire, theft, or everything else that could happen to your property. Now, those two things combined makes up your homeowner's property insurance.
Okay. So when people say wind coverage and hurricane coverage, are those the same thing? Are they referring to the same thing?
That is correct. Wind coverage and hurricane coverage are the same thing. Okay, so basically, in Florida, there's two parts to every policy. One that will protect you specifically against hurricane coverage. It has a separate deductible, and there's a separate
Okay.
part of it that will cover you from, everything else that could happen, from somebody running into your house to your house catching on fire. Again, that's a separate part of your policy, but both of them are under one policy, which is your homeowner's policy.
So you just mentioned having a separate deductible for hurricane coverage. How does that work?
Normally, the hurricanes, the portion of the policy that deals with the hurricane comes normally, on average, with a 2% deductible off
Okay.
the price of the dwelling or the coverage, the insurable value of the home. So if your home is insured for, let's just say, $400,000, your hurricane deductible would be 2% of that $400,000. Therefore, in case of a hurricane, your deductible would be $8,000. That would be, essentially deducted from the total amount of your claim. Most people are under the impression that they have to pay out the deductible up front in order to collect on the claim, but that's not the case. They just usually subtract that deductible amount from your policy,
Okay.
or whatever payout you're entitled to.
Okay. So there is no, you have loss from a hurricane. Things are bad enough. It's not like you have to now fork out money up front in order to have
Not at all. Not at all. You
that.
never
That's
you
awesome.
never have to write out a check for any, paying out any type of deductible portion.
Okay. That's
It's
great
whether the
info.
claim is above the deductible or below deductible. But in terms of you paying out to collect, that's not the way it works.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask about, because I think there may be some confusion about this, and that is flood insurance. Because naturally, when there is a hurricane, there's typically a lot of rain, a lot of water, and there's flooding. Is that why we have flood insurance in Florida? And are we protected
That's a
with a
very
flood
good
insurance
question.
policy?
Now, flood insurance is always a separate coverage. There are two types of flood. There's internal flood, which is, pipe break, pipe leak, water, dishwasher breaking, fridge leaking, like appliances causing major damage. There's also flood, which is water from the outside, rising waters from the outside coming into your home. Now,
Right.
it's very important to know that if you are in a flood zone, that you need to have a flood policy, because your hurricane coverage will not cover you in the event that is an actual flood. It doesn't have to be a hurricane. It could be that it rained for 2, 3, 4 days in a row, and now the whole block is submerged. The driveways are underwater. Technically, that's a flood zone.
So I've heard some different conversation back and forth lately about this whole issue of flood zones. I know, it's a question that my clients commonly ask, are we in a flood zone? Are we not in a flood zone? Should you only consider having flood insurance if you are in a defined flood zone, or is it something that's worth having regardless? And what does it cost?
You can't predict the future. And to be perfectly honest with you, Florida is built on water. So all of Florida is really a flood zone. Now, it's whether
Mm.
you are in a standard flood zone or you are in an elevated flood zone. So
Ah,
technically, you should have a separate flood policy. If you're in a standard flood zone, typically those don't cost too much. Probably on average about $500. and that's up to $250,000 of coverage. But if you are in a flood zone, number one, it will be a little bit more expensive. But if you're not covered in the event that you are suffering from a flood event, your homeowner's policy will not cover that flood occurrence.
So I've heard someone also mention that you should make sure that your insurance policy covers water damage. What's the difference between flood insurance and water damage? I would assume that they're the same thing.
Great question. Water damage pertains to pretty much coverage inside of the home. Now, what's been going on, or lately more so, more carriers, they have a limit on the amount of water damage that you can recoup in the event of an internal flood or an internal leak. Now, that's been put in play for a number of different reasons, but typically now most homes that are built in from the 60s to the 70s to the 80s or even the 90s, they have that 10,000 water limit, especially in Miami-Dade County, in Broward County, and Fort Lauderdale as well. Those homes have that water limit not to exceed 10,000, and that's it's not a good thing for the homeowner, but that's the environment that we're in right now with the insurance, because there's not many carriers right now in this county, either Dade or Broward and now Palm Beach, offering coverage. So to minimize the claim that are being filed, they put the water limit, the water limit cap in play to kind of keep it manageable to deal with the water claims that could be, arising from some of these homes.
You know, Pat, I literally just disconnected a call from a client who is relocating into the area. They are coming from the Carolinas, where there are hurricanes. So they couldn't quite understand why our insurance scene would be different to theirs. But I was explaining that it is. And I don't know if you can shed a little bit of light on that. Is there something that's happening in Florida as regards to insurance that may not be happening in other states where there is a propensity to have a hurricane?
That's another that's a problem that we've been seeing over the past couple of years. The fact that the market is kind of tight in Broward County and Miami-Dade County, it limits the amount of insurance companies that can do business right now in the Tri-County area. So of course, the ones that are in the county, they're charging a premium because the risk is higher in the Tri-County, simply because over the past couple of years, the amount of litigation has taken a toll on the insurance companies.
Mm.
So part of that same thing that we discussed earlier with the water damage being at $10,000 was to kind of curb some of that activity. So the insurance companies paid out a lot in claims. I'm not saying that clients don't have valid claims; they do, but there is some activity off market that kind of drove excess litigation, if you will. So now they have to battle against all of those. So the increase, of course, the client gets passed down to the client, and then ultimately the penalty is that the insurance carrier doesn't want to do business in Fort Lauderdale or in Broward County. Then everybody suffers because the amount of course, the claim activity, and also we are in a hurricane state. So when we do get hit, which is not a lot, there's a lot of damages for the ones that are operating in the state. So they eventually have to recoup some of that. But it's a problem that is really made up of many complex, issues that are really unique to Florida in terms of climate, hurricanes,
Got it.
litigation, and, and,
Got
and
it.
things of that nature.
But to clarify, we can get insurance. It's just that we have fewer options and a little bit more restriction
That is
involved.
correct. A few
Okay.
years ago, where we had options where you could get maybe 10 or 12 different insurance companies in Broward County or in Miami, now you're down probably to a select 5 or 6, and so the problem right now becomes now everyone is really constricted in terms of access to carriers, so it
Right.
comes down to only the few that are really available.
Got it. Tell us a little bit about, I know from my own situation, my insurance carrier that I've had for a few years that you found for us, left the market, correct? And so we now need to find a new carrier, which you have been actively following after me
Yes,
about doing certain things in order to get the new coverage. So I wanted to touch on the things that you want us to do in order to have a new policy, the two types of inspections that you've asked me to get, and also to explain the repercussions if I don't do it and we are now in a situation of having force-placed insurance. Can you tell us a little bit about that scenario?
absolutely. First and foremost, to really maximize your discounts, there's a few things that need to be done. Of course, every homeowner takes pride in their home, and you want to keep your home updated first and foremost. Now, in terms, when in regards to the insurance company, if the home is older than 20 years old, they need to know what's going on, okay? What's going on with the roof? What's going on with the AC? Was it changed or replaced? What's going on with the electrical system? What's going on with the plumbing? They want to know what they're getting before they decide to accept you. So the
Mm.
one thing that we need to do, number one, is called a 4-point inspection, which again will verify the age of the roof. Is it 10, 15 years old? Does it need replacement? How many years do you have left before you replace the roof? Because it's just not good business to take on a risk or a home where the roof only has a year or two of life left. Then within a year or two, any strong wind will blow a few shingles off the roof. Now the carrier is kind of stuck replacing a $40,000 roof
Right.
that should have been replaced probably 5 years ago. So the 4-point inspection is important to determine the age of the roof, the condition on the roof, and also it also looks over the electrical. Was the electrical panel changed over the past few years? There are some panels on the market that are a risk hazard because they've been around since the late 70s and the 80s. They're not allowed now. They're still functional, but they pose a strong risk of fire. So the insurance company wants that removed and changed. Your AC system, which is probably almost 60% of the time the reason for a leak inside of the home, they want to know if that was updated, and also the plumbing, such as the water heater. All those things must be current, number one, for the home to be eligible to be insured. That's number one. Now, number two, the second thing that you need is what's called a wind mitigation inspection. That wind mitigation inspection is its sole existence is to give you a discount. It's your best friend. Now, if your home was
Okay.
updated, you would get a wind mitigation inspection done. And once that's done, it would tell you pretty much how the roof was, constructed, the shape of it, how the roof is attached to the deck, how the roof is attached to the wall. The stronger the straps or the connection, the deeper discount you get. And of course, last but not least, hurricane impact windows and doors. If you happen to have done that to your home, then you need to get a new wind mitigation inspection done, because that's the only way that the insurance company can verify that you actually deserve the discount. And just to give you an idea, without the wind mitigation inspection, the policy price could be probably up to $6,000 or $7,000. With the wind mitigation report, now that same policy is probably about 3,000 or 3,400.
Wow,
So
it's a giant
sometimes it's
difference.
almost 50 to 60% of the price of the policy that you can get a discount on. And normally those inspections run about $150 to $200. So it's very wise to spend a couple $100 to get at least, $3,000 or $4,000 in discount. So if you really want to maximize your discount, is to always to make sure that your home has been updated, number one. And then number two, make sure that the wind mitigation is good for 5 years. So if you've had one done within the past 5 years, there's no need to kind of redo
Do
one.
a new one. So you touched on something that I think is good to dive a little deeper into, which is the issue of storm protection as far as windows and doors. So, correct me if I'm wrong, as far as, the different types of storm protection that we have in South Florida, we have different types of ways that you could protect the window. It could be shutters, it could be accordion shutters, it could be impact. Do you get different levels of discounts based on the type of storm protection that you have?
That's a great question. Now, typically on the panels that you have to apply, there's no protection.
Really?
None. None. That's the
Wow.
basic protection level, so you don't really get anything for it.
Okay.
Now, with
So,
the accordion shutters, if everything is shuttered, including the front door, and your garage doors also a hurricane impact garage door, you get the maximum
okay.
discount. Where
Okay.
there's hurricane impact glass all around the house without the accordion, you still get the same discount. You still get the maximum discount for hurricane. So hurricane shutters, accordion shutters are good. Glass, impact glass is great. But the panels themselves, you don't get any credit for that. So
So the
it's
saving
wise
is
if it's a
huge,
home
though.
that you plan on
Yeah.
staying in for a long time to do a one-time investment because that hurricane discount could be up to 15%, maybe 20% off your policy price. And that's something that you benefit from, for the rest of the time that you live in the home.
Pat, one of the things that happens, of course, for us in our team and for most agents is that we're showing homes to buyers every day. And as we're showing homes, we do get these questions. How old is the roof? What type of plumbing? You know, I know, in other words, I know there are certain types of pipes that the insurance companies are less interested, for want of a better word, or maybe you can't even get the coverage based on the type of pipes that you have. So those things are covered in a 4-point inspection. So is it that you need to do a 4-point inspection on any home, or is it a certain age home that you need the 4-point for? How does that work?
The 4-point typically now, before it used to be 30 years or older, if the home was 30 years, was the mark, you would need a 4-point inspection. Now, with a lot of carriers, if the home is 20 years old or over 20 years old, they require a 4-point inspection because they typically know within 20 years, has the roof been changed at least once?
Hmm.
In 20 years, was the water heater changed at least once? And those are the things that they're looking for. So if the home is typically less than 20 years old, number one, they will probably ask for a 4-point. I mean, if it's more than 20 years old, they will ask for a 4-point. And more importantly, what's going on now is that a lot of these companies, they'll do an inspection. So they may not ask for a 4-point inspection, but when they come to your house and they look at your water heater and they realize that it's 17 years old, they will tell you have 30 days to change it or we'll cancel your policy.
Wow.
So typically they were more lenient in terms of giving clients time to kind of fix deficiencies, but the climate has changed. So now it's like if this is not done within a certain amount of time, the policy is canceling because they know folks are like, they're people are people. They say, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. And then something happens, and then now the insurance has to cover it. So if it's not handled with a licensed contractor, whether it's a plumber or an electrician, that work doesn't count. And that's another thing that I want to bring to the forefront, Nikki, because a lot of the times, we all have friends and family, they're handy, they know how to do
We
stuff,
have an
okay?
uncle, a cousin. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Oh,
now
I
that
can
guy
do it
comes
for you.
over, he
Yeah.
helps you. If
Yeah.
he's not licensed, somebody has to do the work all over again and you have to pay for it again. So
Wow.
when it comes down to the insurance company, you have to do it right or you have to do it twice.
Got it. One of the things that we haven't responded to yet is the question of force-placed insurance. What is that and how does it work?
Force placed insurance, and I probably get maybe 3 or 4 calls a week.
Oh my God.
And
I'm
it's
trying
the
not to be one
biggest,
of them.
it's the biggest misunderstanding that people have. They'll say to me, my insurance canceled, but my mortgage gave me insurance. And I get that. And I explain to them they're protecting their loan. So if something happens, a hurricane comes through, the home catches on fire, and the asset is burnt, the home is destroyed, the balance of your loan will be paid off. The rebuilding of the asset is your full responsibility.
Wow.
There's no
Correct me if
protection.
I'm wrong. Isn't force-placed insurance extremely expensive?
Force placed insurance is probably at least double the price of what you would pay
Wow.
for less than half of the coverage.
Oh my goodness. So
And
really, it's
again, force place insurance does not protect you against liability in your home. So if somebody decides to sue you, that component does not exist with force place insurance.
oh my goodness.
So people are really putting themselves at a risk thinking that they are protected, but all the bank is really doing is protecting their financial interests.
You just mentioned something about the homeowner accepting responsibility. I want to touch on people who don't have a mortgage. I've heard of a few of them who figure, well, I don't have a mortgage. I'm not going to bother with insurance. I'll take the risk. What's your thought on that?
My thought on that is that insurance is usually expensive until you need it to pay for something that you can't afford.
Yeah.
I can decide to say, you know what, my home is paid off. I don't need insurance. Now there's a hurricane that comes through and my roof is destroyed and I'm facing a $45,000 bill to fix the roof. Are you gonna write a check out of your savings of $45,000?
Wow.
Even
That's
if folks are wealthy, that's gonna hurt.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Another thing that raises the subject of is, okay, so a hurricane comes through, you lose your roof and everything inside the house because your roof's gone. You have damage inside. Are you covered through hazard, homeowner, whatever we want, like what do the different types of insurance that we've talked about, do they cover your contents? And is there anything else that we need to do as homeowners to make sure that our contents are protected?
Now, if, like you mentioned, the scenario that you just mentioned, hurricane comes through, takes off with the roof, water's pouring inside, right? It's a mess. As long as the root cause of the loss is the hurricane, then
Got it.
everything should be covered.
Okay. Do you need to do anything? Do you need to? I remember when I bought my first home, they told us make sure you take a picture of everything so that you can show the bank what you have, or I'm sorry, show the insurance company what you need to have replaced.
That's very wise because in reality, no one is gonna go around with an inventory list in their home and jot down everything that they have. But if you take a picture of the room and you have that in your records, just by looking at it, you can detail out everything that you have. And by doing so, remember how much you paid for it when it's time for you to be reimbursed. Because you can't commit everything that you have to memory. And of course, most of the time, if you do have it on paper somewhere, it burnt down in the house with the fire.
Absolutely. I'm just thinking this is a perfect reason why we all need to scan our receipts for major purchases and have them stored in the cloud somewhere in case of situations
Correct.
like
Just
this.
scan it and put it away in the
Yeah,
cloud.
absolutely. You know, Pat, what structures are covered by the insurance policy?
Other structures, and that's a great question because last time I think when Irma came through in Florida, we got a lot of calls because people didn't know which portion of the policy handled the fence. We didn't have much damage in terms of the homes themselves, but a lot of trees fell. The trees fell and they fell in fences. The fences flew away. So other structures, which is usually a percentage of your dwelling, will deal with your fence around your property and also like a shed
Right.
that you might have, things of that nature will fall under other structures. It's usually an automatic component within your homeowner's policy. And there are times where folks want to save a little bit of money. They'll say, take out other structures. I don't have anything on my property other than the house. Even if you exclude it, it doesn't give you much of a savings. It's
Got
one of
it.
those things like it's like an add-on to your policy and you benefit from it. So it's very, very important to have as opposed to trying to save, a few dollars and exclude it. And now a hurricane comes through and now you have to replace your fence and they're telling you $10,000, $15,000 where that little endorsement could have easily taken care of that for you. So very important to, think about. And ultimately, I believe that as a consumer, you need to speak to your agent. That's one thing that there's a few things that you can do online, but insurance is very complicated to just think that I want to quote on my home, email me this policy. Okay, I get it. This is a good price and let me pay for it. Like I make sure that every component of that policy, the insured understands how it works. And more importantly, I tell them if anything goes wrong, if you have any question at all, don't call your auntie, don't call your cousin, don't call your best friend, call your agent.
Right.
Don't call the insurance company, call your agent.
So if something happens, if there's a storm, if there's a fire, if there's a pipe that breaks in your home, call the insurance
Call the
agent
agent always
first.
first and foremost.
Got it. And why is that?
Because
Why
normally
shouldn't you
people
call the
get bad
insurance
advice.
company? Yeah. Why not call the insurance company?
I'm sorry?
Why not call the insurance company directly?
You could call the insurance company directly, but most people don't know how to navigate through that, especially if they haven't filed a claim or the very first time they're intimidated and they know it's a recorded phone call. So it's kind of nice to kind of prep you for what you're about to get into, number one. And number two, in the midst of all of that, they're getting a million phone calls from their family members or friends telling them, do this, do that, do this, do that. So they're not in the right mindset,
So
especially if they're going to give a recorded statement. It's advisable to speak to your agent, just like you would speak to an attorney
right.
before you go handle something to make sure that everything is being done
Is
correctly.
it possible that if a simple phone call to ask a question could be considered the opening of a claim?
What's that?
Is it possible that a simple phone call to ask a question could be considered the opening of a claim?
You could make a claim.
Is it considered a claim though? If
You're
you
breaking
call
up a
to
little
ask
bit.
a, sorry, are you hearing me? Yeah? I was saying, is it possible,
Go ahead, try it now.
okay, is it possible that by calling to ask a simple question, it could be considered the opening of a claim?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because normally, if you call the insurance company, especially the claims department, you have to identify yourself. You have to give them a policy number. You have to give them your name, and they're gonna call. They'll gonna ask you, "What's the purpose of your call?" And
Got it.
typically, most people will start and say, "Is this covered?" Now, the insurance company will never give you an answer up front. They'll tell you, "We need to send somebody out to take a look at it." If they need to
Mm,
send somebody out to take a look at it, on adjuster, on a person has to call you back for any reason, it's a claim.
got it. Got
Zero
it.
dollars were paid out, but it's a claim.
Okay. And what, filing a claim, how does it affect your insurability going forward?
It doesn't really affect your insurability because at the end of the day, that's the reason why you have insurance. Things will happen. Now, what happens is that if you have excessive claims, typically more than 2 in 3 years, which is not really likely to happen, then something else is going on.
Got it.
You
Got
understand?
it.
The
Yeah.
majority of the time, somebody has a claim. It's once every 7 years, once every 10 years. But if you're having a claim, and I do understand that things will happen, but if it's more than 2 claims in 3 years or 3 claims in 5 years, those are the numbers that they look at. Like this person is prone to sue or to file a claim all the time, and it doesn't rub them the right way. Now, what happens
Okay.
is that it's not. Some companies will choose not to deal with you because of the amount of claim. But I've had policies that I've insured, and after the insurance company just finished paying out 80, 90, $100,000 in claims, because sometimes, yes, claims are valid and things will happen. But it's really more so the frequency of filing claims and the amount of the claims that will
Okay.
disqualify you from a carrier because there's just too much activity.
One of the things that I was just wondering about also, when we were talking about structures, what about your car? Is it covered in the event of a storm?
Then that actually falls under the comprehensive portion of
Okay.
your automobile coverage.
Oh, okay.
So if something happens, there's a hurricane, or there's a flood. Like typically, if there's a flood, the street's flooded, and you run your car to a flooded waters, and your car
Yes.
dies and it's totaled, the comprehensive will take care of that. If
Okay.
the car catches on fire, comprehensive will take care of that. Now, anything other than collision is considered comprehensive. So your auto coverage, hopefully, if you have proper coverage, will handle that as well.
What is an umbrella policy? I've heard that term before, and I'm not quite sure what it is.
An umbrella policy really was something that used to be a lot of high value folks, a lot of assets, highly collectible, if you will, would use that as a layer of protection because typically, especially in the state of Florida, the average liability amount on your homeowner's policy is $300,000. Now, people are suing all the time for 500, 700, or up to a million. The umbrella policy will cover you from 300,000 to a million. So in other words, if I am being sued, hopefully not, but if I'm being sued for the first $300,000 for my homeowner's policy would have to be exhausted. And once that's exhausted, then anything beyond that 300, they would go after the umbrella policy up to a million. So
Okay.
if you have, if you're highly collectible and, prone to be sued or you're out there, you want to protect your assets, you want to have a separate policy to deal with that in case something happens, it's advisable. And typically they're not that much, they're not that expensive. Usually about $500 for $1 million, 600 bucks for $1 million.
Awesome.
So if you need it, again, insurance is expensive until you need it to pay for something that you can't afford.
What about something that I think is really important to understand as we enter the hurricane season is this whole thing of is it do I have enough time to buy hurricane insurance? So I am buying a home and I'm getting ready to close in a week and my lender says, "Do you have proof that you have insurance?" And I call you and you tell me you're out of luck because
Correct.
you're in the box. We are in the box, and there is no possibility of getting insurance right now. What is that? What does that mean? Why does it happen? And what can we do about it?
Right. It's called Don't Get Stuck in the Box. Don't
Well,
get stuck in the box. Now, what happens is that typically, once a hurricane is out there, it's brewing out there, right? And they estimate that it will, make landfall in so many days. Typically, between 48 to 72 hours of that projected time, right? Or the distance, if you will, is about, I believe, it's 16,000 square miles
okay.
away from Florida. That considers the box. So the minute the hurricane
Wow.
enters that box within 16,000 square miles of Florida, you will get the binding suspension from most insurance carriers because they know within a day or two, 3 days at most, this hurricane will make landfall, and it's just not good business to take on all this additional risk ahead of the hurricane. So most of the time, and I've seen it, I've witnessed this, I've experienced it, that 2 or 3 days prior to a hurricane, I will get a bunch of phone calls of folks that have been uninsured for the past 2 years, and now they want hurricane. But now coverage is not available.
Right.
But the funny thing about it is that as soon as the hurricane passes, it leaves the box, and now they are eligible to get coverage. They're no longer interested.
Oh my goodness.
So that's part of the reason why the insurance company is saying, if you're waiting for the last minute to get coverage, you're kind of irresponsible. So they're not going to extend that to you. And at the same time, they have to wait for a day or two once the hurricane leaves the area to open the area back up to issue coverage. They're protecting their interests so that the folks that are responsible, if they do suffer a claim, they could be, handled properly. So don't get stuck in the box.
So really and truly, for a new homeowner who's in contract to purchase a home, it makes sense for them to purchase their insurance policy pretty much as soon as they've finished with the inspection.
Absolutely, because you're not bound to the insurance company
Oh,
unless you close.
excellent. So it's really just so are they actually paying for the policy? How does that work? Tell us what
You,
happens. They send you
so
the
if,
inspection
if
report.
if we're supposed to, like in your instance, you have a buyer who's closing on Wednesday,
Okay.
right? And they announced that there's a storm that will hit probably Tuesday, so they will suspend coverage by Saturday or Sunday. It would be wise to bind that policy today for next Wednesday, because even if you don't close on next Wednesday, it's a wash. The policy cancels automatically. You don't owe the insurance company any money. They don't owe you any service. They don't owe you any coverage, if you will. So, but you don't want to take the chance to not take this policy. Now, think about it where you decide to wait. Now, the storm comes to town, creates substantial damage. Now, the same quote that we were sitting on, the carrier decides
Right.
because there's so much damage, we no longer want to offer coverage in this area.
Right.
I've
Right.
seen it happen.
So
So
best to
as
just
long as
get
it
it as
doesn't
soon as
cost you a
possible.
penny,
Yeah.
lock it in. It can always be canceled later at no cost.
What about how do I know if I have sufficient coverage?
On your what's called the dwelling of your home, every insurance company uses what's called the replacement cost estimator. And what that does, that tells them pretty much how much should the home be insured for in terms of replacing the asset. Most
Okay.
folks are under the impression that if something happens, I paid $600,000 for this home, something happens to my house, I want $600,000. That's not the way it works. The insurance company's responsibility is to replace the item the same way you had it to begin with. It's to make you whole again. Now, whether you could sell that property for $1 million, that's between you and the market. Our responsibility is to restore the asset the same way you had it. 4 bedroom, 2 bathrooms and a half, the tiles, the this and that. We'll give you that. And then if you want to sell it, you sell it. So now every carrier knows, especially now with the price of construction, the price of
Right.
lumber, like it's not cheap to build a home. So they'll look at the square footage, they'll look at the zip code, they have a specific program. Each single insurance company will do their own RCE and say this home needs to be insured for this amount of money, because that's the amount of money it will cost us to rebuild it based on current market condition. And
And
based on
R
that, that's the value.
and RCE stands for replacement cost estimate?
Correct.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
So the lenders need it. They need to know that at least the home is insured up to the replacement cost value, because they want to know that if something happens to the home, there's enough money to rebuild it. Now, the difference is that you might walk into a home and it has Formica countertop, but you upgrade to granite or to quartz. Now, that replacement value on the home is not gonna be the same. Like, can you really, like,
Mm,
if the bathroom is very, very nice and it costs you $15,000 to do it over, are you gonna settle with $6,000 replacement cost in your bathroom, because you won't be able to get the nice stuff
right.
that you currently
Right.
have? And so if you have your receipts to back it up, and you can upgrade your or increase the replacement cost of your home because you know what you have, it's on your best interest to do so, because again, if something were to happen, you want to replace the home with what you have put into it, not what the insurance company says. You know what? I'll give you the cheapest material. Here's your countertop. I'll give you the cheapest towels. This is the towel that you get, especially when you know that that's not what you invested into the home. So it takes time sometimes to sit with the client and say, what's important to you? What have you done to this
Right.
home?
Right.
Do you love your kitchen? Do you love your bathroom? And that's very, very important to kind of figure out the right value for the home, to make sure that if something were to happen, at least they could be made whole at 100%.
So it sounds like as we get closer to June, this is a really good time for a homeowner to look at the improvements they've made, make sure they know where the receipts are, and start to put them together in the event of needing it. Just why not? Now that we understand these things, it would be it would make just perfectly good sense for us to take that precautionary measure in case we ever need it. Pat, what's the best advice that you could give a homeowner to prepare for the hurricane season?
Call me. I'm just kidding. But here's the thing.
I would agree.
But here's the deal. I would say call your agent, okay? And the most common mistake that a lot of homeowners make, they've had the same insurance policy with the
Mm-hmm.
same agent from the day that they bought the house, and it's just been renewing on cruise control for 5, 6, 7 years. And at the end of the day, they don't even know their agent's first name. So if you do not know your agent's first name, call me. But
Good
if you do
advice.
you know your agent's first name, call them.
Because, of course, over the course of 5 or 6 years, the likelihood is quite strong that you've done things in the house. The house is not the same as it was when you bought the house.
Correct.
So
The
you need
value
to
has
make,
changed.
yeah,
The conditions have changed. And then number two, if you're not careful, something happens, you're gonna be underwater with replacing your home with the value that you have assessed.
got
Now,
it.
if your agent is not really contacting you at renewal every year, then you need to call them because that's sometimes you have to keep them honest because what I do for a lot of my clients is that at renewal, I reshop the policy to make sure that we can get a better price.
Pat, I think my one of my oldest friends from Jamaica is watching. Hi, Andrea. And Andrea says,
Hi.
I'm going to need your number. So, Pat, I think this is a good point for you to make sure, and we will make sure that we send this out. We'll put it in the comments as well, Andrea. But, Pat, do you want to give them your contact info?
Absolutely, absolutely. Anyone can, my telephone number is 848-702-7013. I'm going to put it in the chat as well. I'm available to discuss, I'm available to give advice or to educate anyone about their current policy. And the one thing that I can tell you is that a lot of the times I will um, I will review a policy for a client just to make sure that what you have is good. And if it's good and we can't beat it, I will let you know that you have something good and leave it alone. The
Which is
best thing
awesome,
to
you
do is
know.
to make sure that you have a relationship with your agent because insurance is very, very important not to know what's going on. And I tell most of my clients, not when you have a claim, you're saying, where's my policy? Who do I call? And we get that all the time. So again, if you have an agent, he works for you. Technically, he doesn't work for the insurance company. So
Right.
reach out to him, make sure that you protect it correctly.
It seems like another good thing to make sure you have stored in that cloud that we're talking about is the actual policy,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
Um, all right. Any final thoughts or suggestions?
Um, it's in regards to insurance, it's it's not something that anyone looks forward to because no one likes to pay insurance, and I get that. But what I can assure you is that I can ease the pain in terms of buying the insurance and to make you understand what you are buying because ultimately people just buying insurance but they're like I don't even know what my policy has.
Yeah.
So if you understand what you are covered for, you'll feel better about shopping for it when it's time to shop for it. So let's have a conversation. I'm available at any time.
Pat, Andrea is also asking if you do commercial insurance.
We do commercial insurance as well, absolutely.
Why don't you tell us all what are the different types of insurance that you offer, coverage
We do
policies that you write?
at John Galt, we do commercial insurance, we do home insurance, we do auto insurance, we do flood insurance, we do life insurance. So everything except health insurance we do.
Awesome.
So if you
Okay.
have a question in regards to insurance, I'm either an expert at it or I know somebody else who's an expert at it. So we'll get you right.
You know, guys, I will tell you that Patrick has been my agent for many years. He represents almost all of my clients as well because he cares. He'll tell you the truth. He gives you accurate information, and he'll also find you the best possible policy
Thank you, Nikki.
to protect your assets. So I can't recommend him highly enough. And I'm not just saying that because you're my friend. It's a fact. So thank
Appreciate
you
it.
for all you do for us, even though sometimes Darren is a little difficult to deal with. Did I say that? Um, thank you so much for all you do for us and for my clients. I appreciate you.
Thank you,
Guys,
Nikki.
I hope you found this as interesting and fascinating as I have. I learned so much today, and it will definitely help me as I prepare for the hurricane season and give me a lot of talking points with my clients to make sure that they also are protected. So, Pat, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Guys,
Nikki. Thank you,
thanks
everyone.
thanks so much for watching. I love spending Friday evenings with you guys. I've been showing up a little less than I'd like. Work has been crazy, but guys, you know how much I love spending my Friday evenings with you. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for existing, and peace out, everybody.
Peace out.
Bye.